Hi, Misha here, and today has not gone as planned. Was supposed to go shooting, had several guns packed up, and then my ride partner called in sick with a temperature, probably the flu, could be you know what. But either way, yeah, probably not a good day to go shooting when he feels like crap and we'll be trapped in a car together. So this is one of the guns I had packed up, just because I felt like shooting it again. My Romanian Cugir AES-10B semi-auto RPK 7.62x39. So, since it was already kind of out and had to get it out of the box and put it back up, I knew I had some old video footage involving Romanian RPKs, so let's do a bit of a clip for show. And the first one is actually something I did a couple of years ago for TFB TV, James Reeves, but I don't think it ever got published. He was hoping to do a 5 favorite AK videos from different people. I submitted mine, other people didn't. I don't think it ever really went anywhere. But this was actually what I picked as my favorite, all things considered. So with that, let me refer you back to that clip and I'll explain why I put it in there. Sorry if the beginning and end are a little rough. Again, it was meant for a different thing. But, you know, my editing skills are basically none because, well, blind plus video editor. That said, let's cut back to me from a few years back.
Hi, this is Misha. And James has blackmailed me into sending him this video clip about what is my favorite AK. I don't know. I've never been really good at picking favorites on anything. Food, music, other things. So I just went into my gun room, closed my eyes, picked a gun, realized that closing my eyes doesn't matter, opened them back up, and came out with this one. This is a Romanian AES-10B, B as in Bravo. This is a semi-automatic version of the RPK in 7.6239. This is a true import. This is not a gun put together here in the USA. And the reason I decided really to go with this one is I was really very, very happy when these came out. I've always been a fan of the RPK. A lot of folks go for the AKSU, the crank, and that's great. But for some reason the RPK has always attracted me. But for a long time, the best you could do were quality kit builds, and there were some very good ones, including some from Romanian kits. But when these guns started to come in from Romania, built by Cugir, which is the arsenal over there that's been set up by the Russians back in the early 60s and still producing guns today on original Russian tooling and using original Russian plans, I just thought it was great because you get everything that the real military gun had, except it's on a semi-auto receiver. And I mean that literally. If you look on the trunnion here, you'll see it's dated 1989 and has arsenal marks. This was originally a select fire gun over in Romania. They took the select fire with the 3rd pinhole receiver, cut it up, built it on the same exact receiver, just less the 3rd pinhole, and that's where this gun came from. We have a 23¼ inch cold hammer forge chrome lined RPK heavy barrel. We have the late Romanian style adjustable bipod. See these little wing nuts here? These extend in and out a good bit. I really like these on an RPK because it means you can actually extend them out enough that it won't monopod on a 40 round mag. The standard RPK bipod is pretty hard on using the long mags. Have a 14mm standard AK thread. I have an aimer flash hider on here. You can put whatever you want. We have a standard length gas system. We have wood handguards. The lower one is thicker, both to accommodate the fatter barrel and also for better protection against its heat. We have a bulged heavy front trunnion. We have a windage and elevation adjustable rear sight, which is nice. We have an extra thick, smooth top cover. These are about half again as thick as a standard AKM top cover. This is the Paratrooper version. It has a simple wire folding stock. If you don't like the folding stock, it's held in by 2 screws. Take it out, put a standard club foot on. Easy as could be. We do have a scope rail mount on the side for attaching an optic. This receiver, although it is semi-auto only, is made just like the military. It's 1.5 millimeter stamped steel, not 1.0. It does not have magwell dimples, which is correct for an RPK. The Russian and Romanian RPKs did not have magwell dimples after about 1970. We have a true machined recoil guide rod, not stamped as on the AKM, for better dependability, durability. So this gun is built as tough and heavy as any military RPK because pretty much every part on it is a military RPK part. We even have this carry handle, which is distinctive to Romanian guns. They would introduce this in the late 80s and carry it through to their more modern production RPKs. It's not the best carry handle, but it works. We have a true forged trunnion, true forged other parts, not cast, and so that's why I like it. Now, so I like that it is an import, that it's an authentic gun, not a US kit gun, but that's not all I could do to qualify gun as my favorite. I also had to go with looks. I think RPKs just have the look to them. Just the ergonomics, the aesthetics appeal to me in that kind of Cold War Red Dawn way. But most of all, shooting. This gun is a blast to shoot. Absolutely reliable, no question about it. Also, just plenty accurate, no felt recoil. And what else can you want? I mean, it's a fun, reliable gun, and you can mount an optic to it if you want. You can also adjust the bipod and fold the stock if you need to make it more compact or use different mags. So to me, that's why I've picked it as my favorite AK variant, and I thought it was kind of one that you wouldn't see every day. If you have any questions, please post them and one of us will answer them. Really appreciate you tuning in. And if you would, check out our channel, Mishaco. We have plenty of AK content and long, boring history videos. Hope to see you there. Thank you.
And me back in the present. And here it is with its legs fully extended. Quite a bit more than what you would see on a Russian style. Plenty of room on the bottom now, so it cannot monopod. Even with the stock folded, so do it here. It has enough room to kind of sit on the pistol grip and still let the mag hang down free and happy. And you would think the mag would interrupt with this Paratrooper foregrip, but really it's not too bad because of the arc. Gets in the way a little bit, but when I say that now, it's gonna fight me. There we go. Pressing it a bit, it could be better, but with the drum, it's got a lot more wiggle room, literally. But speaking of variations, let's talk about how this, the PM64 light machine gun, started off in Romania, how it was very much like the Russian variant back in the 1960s, and how it eventually diverged, paying special attention to bipods because there are several variations in hybrids, as well as other components. So it's time to bring in my Russian RPK, and this is an early one from the dawn of their creation, or rather the parts kit is. This was assembled by Legion USA using a complete matching parts kit from the company we know today as Malot on a US receiver. and using a US barrel. The good news is at least the barrel is chrome lined, and the good news is this is supposed to have dimples, and this is not. It's one of the many changes. Like me from the past video said, the AES-10B is really the only way to get an authentic Russian spec RPK import. There are other guns, for example, the Bulgarian SA RPK that Arsenal sells, but that's not really the same. In fact, it's built on a whole different system, as are the Valmet M78s. So a parts kit build is the only way to go aside from this. And there are several changes. Now the RPK, of course, was built to be a light support gun, squad automatic, LMG, what have you, for the Russian military. Issued one per squad. And they even had a folding stock version, although totally different style stock than this, for paratroopers operating from armored vehicles. I've already talked about in the past the features and how it's beefed up. But Romania was one of the few nations outside of Russia to actually build the true RPK under license. Cugir over there started building the AKMs, the PM63 in 1963, although some people think there might have been some from 62 kind of as a pre-production. Likewise, they started building the RPKs, the PM64 LMG, in 1964. That seems to have been a pretty limited production year, but by 65 they were up and running, but it was an early version. Now their guns fed from the same top-loading 75-round drum as Russia, as well as using 40-round extended AK box mags. Now these early guns had some unique features. For one, they still had a dimpled receiver at the magwell area, even though it's 1.5 millimeters. They also had a ribbed top cover, AKM style. They also had a non-lightning cut bolt carrier. Now this one has the standard windage rear sight, but early Romanians had essentially an AKM style rear sight, as well as the ribbed top cover, dimpled receiver, and so on and so forth. Now notice here, this is the Russian style bipod and bipod collar. Very different from our Romanian friend here. Both are still threaded 14 millimeter. To be fair, most of your Romanians would have still had the muzzle nut. I just put this Romanian flash hider on because the later 545 guns did use it and it looks neat. So they did change this up. They also changed the handguard retainer a bit here, putting a small stop for the bipod legs, a little rest there, a little nipple, whereas on the Russian style they just rest on the cleaning rod. Also seems like the Russian cleaning rod is ever so slightly thicker. That could just be my imagination. And they use the same type of clubfoot stock. In fact, the folding stock version would not appear until much, much later. Now this one here has the original early style wood grip. This one has the concave checkered grip. But an interesting thing, the Russian guns, once they went to a synthetic grip, also used the concave checkering. Typically in kind of a plummy color, but a shiny plum. And the Romanian gun started off as pretty much an exact clone or copy. Now Russia dropped the dimples around 1968-69. Instead, they just went to the slab side like we see here. Now typically we identify this with a Wasser type receiver where it's cut out from single to double stack, and these are. But it actually ends up looking correct because they figured out that dimpling the receiver wasn't really worth the time and bother. The reason this was added was not to stabilize magazines, but to reinforce the receiver in between rivets. Well, here they figured out that the 1.5 was enough, plus they would weld in small plates so it's plenty durable and thick. Romania would take a little longer to transition over. We don't know exactly when. 1968 they were still dimpling. By 1974, 75, they seem to have gone away. By 76, definitely. Similarly, we don't know when they went from the rib top cover to the smooth, but it was relatively around the same time, because I've seen kits that came in 74 with a rib cover still, although I've also seen kits from 73 that had a smooth. By the way, the smooth is of course thicker than the ribbed. As far as the kind of odd non-windage rear sight, that seems to have been dropped pretty early on. And one of the last things to change, the bipod. The transition would start maybe around as early as 1974 with the earliest adjustable legs, although some put it as late as 1979. But I'll agree that early on they still used the Russian style short collar. But by the 80s they would go to this longer collar that also has these wing nuts to quick detach it. That leaves the mount on the barrel, but the legs can be detached. And there's definitely benefits to that. Some also claim this doubled as a mount for putting it in an armored vehicle. And while Russia had both a fixed and folding stock version, Romania did not seem to introduce the folding stock until the 1980s. And it still has the same rear trunnion, unlike the Russian folder. And it uses a slightly modified version of their standard crutch stock. Now in Romania, this stock doesn't appear until around 1986, so that kind of gives you an idea. They just beefed it up here a bit, plus they modified it to fit the 1.5 receiver a little better. So like I said, this was one of my favorite guns to shoot, so let's show some range footage. Why not?
AES-10B, first mag.
Good. Always a pleasurable, fun gun. We also shot this one at the Eclipse shoot back in 2017 as well. A few other little differences, obviously. The carry handle on the side here, literally just a bracket welded on. Much like this flash hider, the carry handle was more identified with the 545 version. Originally, we used to think of the 545 it was known as the PM86 LMG, but more recently the name PM93 LMG has come to light, although I've also heard PM91. So the carry handle seems to be more attached to it, but here it is on the 7.62 gun. One interesting thing too that I added a few years ago was this very unique dong foregrip. Now a standard dong will not fit this gun. Part of it is the wider receiver and bulge trunnion, and part is the heavier, thicker barrel with the heavier handguard retainer. If you try to put a standard dong on, it simply won't fit. It's too small. And these are pretty uncommon. In fact, they were downright rare until Arms of America imported some parts kits with these. Now, when these guns came in through Century, the PM89, well, we call them that, the AES-10Bs with the 1989 dated guns, they actually had handguards that originally had the dong on them, but they were cut off. They were shaved off. You can kind of feel a bump on the bottom. Very much a shame because pretty rare part. But they did come with the correct stock and matching numbers. And they were all pretty well consistent with the adjustable legs. Now one thing, the early AES-10s and AES-10Bs, and I have done a video last year on that original AES-10, they had a PMK or PKM bipod. And it's hotly debated if Romania ever used those on the PM64 series. But one country did use them. Of all things, Arsenal, AD, Circle 10, Bulgaria, definitely does use a PKM type bipod on what it calls its LMG. Many consider this an RPK. It's really not, and it's not just because it's on a machined receiver, milled receiver, but it has a totally different barrel. And of course this one's in 5.56, but they also make it in 7.62, 39, and even a few in 5.45. But note the short legs and the different style of collar that's actually hinged on each side. You can actually easily remove this. And this one even stores a cleaning rod inside, a 3-piece. Some do, some don't. So I still think, and I have had some Romanians tell me that they've had PKM type bipods. I wonder if they were maybe battlefield replacements or maybe very early production ones, before they had bipod production fully up and running, or maybe just they ran short of bipods and they grabbed some. Weird things happen, but nothing's ever for sure, so take it as you will. But this one definitely does use a PKM style. And heck, why not a little range footage to liven things up before we get back to the 30 caliber guns? Why not? SA, RPK. And back to 7.62 by 39 guns. Note the non-lightning cut carrier on this early Russian and the lightning cut on our Romy here. By the way, on military guns, the selector markings, if it's Romanian use, would say S, FA, and FF. For export, kind of following the British pattern, they would be S, A, R. And of course, for our guns, they're semi-only, 2 positions. The name AES-10B actually derives from the export name. PM64 was the internal Romanian name. For export, much as how the PM63 became the AIM, AIM, the PM64 became the AES. Kind of interesting little thing there. So AES-10B would be 10 for the fact that these start off as low cap, and B because it was the second model. Again, did cover the original AES-10, quite a bizarre little hybrid gun some years ago. Now, I mentioned this handguard came from an Arms of America parts kit. Some years back, I also acquired a relatively early fixed stock Romy parts kit from them with the barrel, US made again, already pre-installed, and did build it up, and did plan on doing a shooting video. Unfortunately, because of 2020 and COVID, and not having inventory here, it was one of those guns I ended up needing to move because I had an offer, but I did record a table talk with it, or rather Jay helped me record it. So here's that old footage. And then I want to talk about briefly why this exact version of the AES-10B is kind of special. Needed Jay's help with this, 2 hands. You see, it's pretty smooth. Typical military trigger. Not bad at all, just considering it's well worn in. Safety is a little stiff, but that's not a bad thing. Can always bend it out if you need to. Bipod is typical. Springs open with a decent amount of force considering age. Zoom in on the trunnion marks. So really, aside from being a early production Cugir, it's your typical RPK built. One thing Jay pointed out, and I did forget to mention, I will finish this barrel. Probably just kind of cold blue it to match. Otherwise, this is pretty much ready to go. Move on. Yeah, so some old footage there, but at least I'm in front of the camera, a little younger. And as you know, Jay is off doing other things now, but it was actually an AES-10B, literally this style, folding stock, how we met. He found me selling one and drove down and picked it up, and things kind of went from there. That's how we met. I look back at my records, and that was September of 2010. So that's when we met. And the gun itself was under 200 in my logbook because I had just obtained my own FFL not even quite a year earlier in my own name. Before that, I had worked for a friend at his gun shop with his own license. So it was one of the earlier guns I had. Got it from Century Arms. And how I met Jay, and we had a good 10-year plus run of doing this channel, starting this channel even. So he still has that gun, and a lot of sentimentality there besides. Plus, yeah, you got to see the early kit build there, and hopefully some of the early parts. Pretty cool. Wish I didn't have to sell it, but there it goes. By the way, early on, these had a lot of salt blue parts. Later on, phosphating would become more of the norm. AES-10B, last mag of the day. And let's end with the drum in here. Typically when they would put these in, they would still leave the outer pouch on, just kind of pulling the flap back. It's one of the benefits of the top loader too. You don't need to take it out of its pouch completely to load it. This is of course the later style Romy sling. I don't believe they used a pad like the Russians, but could be wrong on that. In fact, that's the whole thing. I've been studying Romanian guns for a long time. Still learn things all the time because we're still learning in general. There was very little info about these 20 years ago, even 10 years ago. But thanks to parts kits coming in, Century Arms, and really Arms of America, we have started to put together more data. By the way, a scope rail is probably not standard for at least the earlier RPKs, the PM64s, but maybe some later ones would have it, but all the semi-autos pretty much do that come in from Romania. It's one of those things. No big deal. Nice to be able to put an optic on it. These are still in service today, the PM64s alongside the PM93s, the 545 version, and probably will stay in Romanian service for quite some time. They were also a really good export for them, especially going to like African nations. Again, outside of Russia proper, no one else really made a true RPK. The Yugoslavian M72 is its own dog, as is the Bulgarian LMG. Its own cat, we'll say. But what's nice about the RPK in general, it uses so many of the same parts as the AKM, especially parts that commonly break, like, say, with the trigger group, or the bolt. You know, firing pin, extractor, that kind of thing. But of course, the furniture is specific to it, the barrel hardware is specific, but you're not likely to wear out one of the original barrels like this any day soon. Cold hammer forged, chrome lined, heavy. And a semi-auto, one of these, you can shoot it a very long time before you put noticeable wear on it. And for what they are, they're not all that heavy. About 11 pounds. Not bad for a light machine gun, right? They are very smooth and reliable, and it's still one of my very, very favorites today. And for an RPK, if I could only have one, it would probably be this, because it's just so authentic. No shame to Legion with the build they did. It's a great job, but it's US barrel, US receiver. This one's true. Now, personally, if I was going to get an AES-10B, it's kind of neat to get the later style ones where the lack of dimples doesn't stand out. Personal taste there, that's all. And I would probably go with the adjustable bipod. As you see, fully adjusted in here. Still has enough room to clear the drum. Just barely, but it does. There's that nipple on the end of this here. But like I said, I was hoping to go shooting today. Threw this in their bag because just haven't shot it in a while. Things didn't work out, but I'd rather be here safe and sound and not sick than out there having fun and then sick for 4 or 5 days later. So, c'est la vie, right guys? But I'd love to hear what you think, if you've ever built one of these or own an AES-10B, or just have some memories to share like I do with having met Jay over this one. Just felt like kind of talking about it. It is a favorite, and I do like reminiscing over those, and January is a good time for that. So with that, if you please could like, share, subscribe, and if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to the Patreon page. This is Misha. Catch you very soon. Next time.